You're listening to Playing the Next Level, WCGA's official podcast.
I'm so excited to be here right now. I cannot believe this is actually happening. My actual podcast. I've been thinking about this, talking about this, and writing about this for about 2 years now, and I can't believe we're actually here. And honestly, I'm so excited to have with me Dr. Hanan Salim, world-renowned health practitioner, award-winning international speaker, award-winning author, and also the CEO and founder of Tackle and Talk.
Thank you so much. I'm very honored to be your first invitee for the podcast. I'm excited for you.
Honestly, it was meant to be. It was absolutely meant to be. I remember when the first time I met you, we were at an iftar.
Yes.
And we were sat together. We were wearing the same color.
Exactly, I remember. Yes,
we were wearing the same color. We sat together, and you mentioned about sharing a stage with Tony Robbins, and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And I started talking to you about my podcast, and it was just a matter of, you were like, just do it. And I was like, I will, this excuse, that excuse. And about 2 years worth of excuses, and I'm here, and I picked you as my first guest, and I think that kind of propelled and made me do it even faster because I felt like I had your support and your expertise, so I'm really glad you're here.
Of course, and like Nike says, just do it.
Just do it. That's okay. This is interesting because this is our biggest problem, isn't it?
Yes.
It's just doing it, just starting something.
Yeah.
So today's first episode for this podcast, Playing the Next Level, is WCGA's official podcast, is all about mindset and the psychology behind job seeking. So I started WCGA, I was at a point in my career where I was unsure of what was next. I felt stuck. I didn't want to stay where I was, but I didn't know how to move forward. So many different career options, jobs, this, that. But every time I thought about applying for a job, my throat would dry up, my chest would tighten, and I would just be it would just fill me with dread.
Yeah. And
I basically thought hopefully there's someone around that feels the same way. And I posted about it, and within 3 days, my WhatsApp group that I created for women, like-minded women who were going through something similar, was full.
Wow.
And I realized, okay, cool, I'm not alone. There's so many other people that are going through the same thoughts. How do I apply? Or if I want to apply, or I want to change my career, but I can't, but this, I don't have this. All those mental blocks that we, create in our heads. Some of them, obviously, they are justified. We have reasons why we have certain fears because of, obviously, our past histories, traumas, whatever we go through. But specifically when it comes to job seeking, why do we get so stuck? So this is what I wanted to understand, because I've seen a theme within every single person I've met within the WCGA community who's like, can someone help me with my CV, or can you just rewrite my CV, or can you write a cover letter? And obviously this is before ChatGPT, but every time anyone has to do something about themselves, or write something about themselves, or do something for themselves, they can't get started.
Right.
And I can do it for a friend. I'll write a whole business plan for a friend. I will sit there and create a 5-year plan for her. But when it comes to me, I just go, literally, I'm like, I don't want to think about it, talk about it, whatever. So I just really, really want to understand, what is the psychology behind this? Why do we feel like this?
Well, there is, I come from the science background, and everything for me is, numbers, statistics, research, and there's actually a name for it, and it's called the imposter syndrome.
Oh, wow.
So the imposter syndrome is this little voice that we have inside of our head, and that scans through and filters all the failures that we've done in the past, and all the reasons why you cannot do it, or you will fail, or creating that fear, if you will, that doesn't even exist, because you're sitting there in your room, in your house, in front of the screen on your laptop, and you're just going to type your name. But somehow this imposter syndrome creeps in and says, with the blinking tab on your laptop saying, you can't do this, you can't do this. And you get stuck. You get into that voice, you get into that mindset of, I can't do it, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm just not enough. And that's, I think, where a lot of people get stuck. And I've heard it so many times from women especially, that they have so much under their belt, they have so much experience, education, they have all these letters after their names, PhD, masters, and so on. But somehow we always have this, I'm still not enough. I still need more skill sets. I need more this and more of that, or comparing ourselves to other people who might not, we might not even be on their path, but yet we're comparing ourselves to them. So imposter syndrome is a real thing, and it's a real voice, and it's actually our worst enemy. And that's what stands in our way. And that's what creates the fear that gets us stuck, that doesn't allow us to move forward and even ask for help sometimes. And that, I think, is, answers where I think more women actually go through this imposter syndrome. They either hear their mom's voice in their head or the dad's voice in their head. So I have my mom's voice when I used to get, A, and my mom would say, oh, why don't you get 8+? Or I would get a B, or why don't you get an A, right? So coming from, of course, the Arab culture, they think they're pushing you to do better, but you walk away as a child from a young age thinking whatever I do is not enough, or I have to do more. And that's, I think, I get as well stuck sometimes where it's like I don't give myself credit to all my achievements. And like you rightly said, I'm an award-winning author, I'm an international speaker, I have so many certifications, I have master's, PhD, but still I also hear my mom saying, oh, that's fine, you could do better. And I'm always on the next thing to do better. And this is where high achievers actually come to achieving so much and doing so much, because it's never enough. Because you feel you're never enough, and you have to be on the next thing to feel enough and doing something more.
That's super interesting. Of course, I've heard of imposter syndrome, and I know that comes into play like when we feel like, we're feeling like a fraud, we're feeling like we're not, everyone's saying we're so great, but we don't feel it. But I never could put it in the context of sitting there in front of your computer and applying for a job, and that also creeping in. The thing that you said that really just struck something in me. Like, I've realized that my thing has always been, if I'm not achieving, what am I doing?
Right.
So it's always been like, if I don't have something to write home about, like, I don't feel like I'm fulfilled. So I feel like my worth is maybe associated with my doing and achieving.
Yeah.
And so I don't know.
And it actually works against your siblings as well. So my parents, because I was an only child for about 13 years, right? So my parents actually focused on me a lot. And then when my siblings came along, like I was their, the standard, or a high achiever. So they always got like, why can't you be like Hanan? Why don't you do like Hanan? Why don't you do better in math like Hanan? Why don't you get your PhD like Hanan? So Hanan was always on this pedestal that she always has to achieve. But yet I felt bad because my sisters also were feeling, incompatible to Hanan. So actually, it happens in a lot of households where, unfortunately the siblings feel, behind because they can't compete or get the love or attention as the favorite one, right? So actually it has a double-edged sword, where not only are you affecting the person that you're putting on the pedestal to be, not enough, doing always more, trying to achieve more, but you're also affecting the siblings, that they're also not enough. So I know parents do it with, with a good heart, but unfortunately, in the long run, it actually backfires for the sibling, the older sibling, or the other siblings that are being compared to.
There's a reason that we met. But my grandma, I always say to my grandma, don't tell your other like grandchildren?" She's like, "Oh, I told them you should just be like Anum, just be like Anum." And I'm like, they probably hate me because you say all this to them.
Yeah.
And I feel like that because every time another person, like, my grandma will say, someone will talk about another child and they'll be like, "Yeah, but Anum used to always do this. And Anum used to," I'm like, "Oh my God, can you stop?"
Yeah.
And I know I sound like, "Oh my God, I'm talking about myself," but it's not that. It's just how other people perceive you, right? So this is how so again, imposter syndrome kicking in just as I'm even talking about myself.
Exactly.
Like, I'm not as good as they say I am.
Right.
It's just, they just say it.
Because you feel like you're allowing ego to get in the way. But, I read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I think everybody's read that book.
I'm reading it right now.
Yeah, I've read it like hundreds of times. And I remember in there, it always said that you shouldn't celebrate if you have a win. Give yourself 72 hours, 3 days to celebrate. And if you fail, give yourself 72 hours to grieve or that failure. What the point of that is, don't celebrate, but don't stay there in celebrating too long, or don't, dwell on the failure too long, because either way you'll get stuck. There's always room for growth. Till today, after all this time, I'm growing. I'm also learning. I'm an avid reader, even though I'm an author. And I feel if we allow, instead of fight it, or saying it's ego, or down to tone down it a little bit so we don't sound like we're conceited or anything. No, you have a right to celebrate your wins. And that's I think we need that sometimes, because we didn't get that as a child. I was never celebrated for my wins. I was always giving the next task, or what you could do better next time, advice, if you will. And my parents are amazing parents, and I think, we're 3 girls. We don't have any brothers. So I think they wanted this independence really engraved in our DNA, so we don't have to. When we grow up, we're strong, independent women. But I think the way they went about it was pushing it too hard and not actually giving us the attention and the love that we actually needed at that moment. It was always like, okay, if we push her at that moment, maybe she'll do better. And it did work, but until today, I don't actually see myself as this big achiever, and I always get from, online, offline, like, wow, you did this, or you're doing that, or you're a mentor for the United Nations, or you're, actually an ambassador for this, and I see, I'm listening and I'm hearing, but it's not sitting with me. You know what I mean? So, yeah, definitely need to celebrate, accept, and give yourself the pat on the back. And that will actually train that imposter syndrome and that voice to tone down a little bit every time.
So, you just said something about, like, I hear it, but I don't.
Yeah.
What advice would you give yourself right now?
I actually would, there's Mel Robbins. I love Mel Robbins. I do this, and it's a bit weird. And then every morning I do the mirror thing, right? I stand in front of the mirror and I face myself, and I tell myself, okay, Hanan, you didn't do so well on that speech, on that, whatever, but you get them next time. So I actually bring it up consciously, then allow it to sneak in unconsciously. So I do that mirror thing every morning. I look in the mirror and I talk to myself and I say, okay, you did this great, do more of this. Or I'm actually my worst critic, but consciously, if I want to critic myself, being that imposter syndrome, okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Right? And instead of, what we do sometimes is bury it and put it under the rug. And of course, you trip on it when you least expect it. Yeah.
I like that. I'm going to try that.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. It's hard to see yourself in the mirror. It takes a little, it's a little bit of bravery. But you are your worst critic, so might as well speak to yourself and be able to criticize. I mean, and because there's always a learning, I believe, in every failure and every success, there's always a learning. So might as well take in the learning, understand it, and do better next time.
And when was the first time you actually were like, do you have a memory of having this feeling for the first time? Can you remember when it was, when you had this feeling of like?
I think it was in 5th grade when I did well on all my subjects except for the one subject, and that was English, because we migrated to the US when I was a little bit older. I wasn't born there. We migrated when I was around 7, 8 years old. So English was not my first language, so it was something that I actually failed at one of the subjects, and I was so scared to bring my report card home, and just like I thought, I was grounded, I was yelled at, and I felt like really ashamed. So a lot, like, they forgot the A's that I got, and they focused on the one, D, I think at the time I got, and they were very unhappy. So that actually taught me that I got A's, I did well in this and that, but I always look at that one thing that perhaps I could do better, or that would ruin everything else actually that I have achieved. Yeah.
So if that was to happen to somebody, like people that I've met and people that I know, most people, if that happens to them, they wallow in that sorrow or dwell on the fact that they haven't achieved what they haven't, and it holds them back from even trying again. Mm-hmm. Did that ever happen to you, or were you filled with more fire to?
I'm actually the black sheep of the family.
I just cannot.
So I'm always, if you tell me don't do that, I'm going to go do it, or you can't achieve that, so I'm going to go and try to achieve it. So I think it's a challenge. I take it as a challenge, and I think that's what drives me to achieve so much and do better, because I want to prove. I think that's the word. Prove my worth. If not that I couldn't do it as a child to my family, I wanted to prove it to myself, and that's why I'm what they call a go-getter, but I'm actually changed now. I'm a go-giver. So I like to give, I like to help others, and one of the things that I felt would be important is to put everything that I've learned, the methodology, from the mindset, from the physical, from the emotional, the holistic approach, and put that down into a book. And now I'm actually, giving it, it's one of the best-selling books, actually. And I want to have others achieve what their full potential, and that's why I've actually created this book called Second Chances. It won a lot of awards, and I want to actually give it to you.
Thank you so
and
much.
Let me know what you think about.
I cannot wait. Honestly, this is an amazing present. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Not only the fact that you were a guest on my first podcast and we're having such a great conversation, but I can't wait. And yes, I will definitely. We'll be discussing this. We'll have an episode on this for sure.
Of course, yes.
So we have obviously like different childhood incidents and like that scar us in some ways and form our, habits and our reactions to certain things. When you were progressing in your career and you had like you were looking for jobs or moving from like an author to an international speaker, and then there and that, how did you navigate your career journey? You must have done something to silence that voice or overcome those fears, or tell me more about how you did that.
So actually, it's not what I actually intentionally went out to do, but what actually came to me, that was done to me, which was I had, at one point in my life when I was working at a very prestigious hospital in New York City, and I was the P&T committee, Pharmaceutics and Therapeutics committee, so I was the go-to healthcare professional part of a team that we make the decisions for hard to diagnose, hard to treat conditions, and very prestigious position that I had. And I remember it like yesterday. I was actually on one of the floors actually on because actually I was a chemo pharmacist as well, so I'm a clinical pharmacist. I do chemotherapy for cancer patients. And I remember, I was on one of the floors, and I will call her Nurse Mercy. She walks in, and she was looking at me like, Dr. Hanan, I can't believe I see you on the other side of the bed. And what she meant by that was actually I was in the bed. I was the patient at that point. I had developed precancer cells in my ovaries, endometriosis, and I was actually going to be wheeled in to do a hysterectomy. And then that age-old question is, why is it that we're in the heart of Manhattan with the best team, the doctors, but we are still struggling with health chronic conditions, and that is getting worse by the day, worldly actually. And of course that question hit me at the same time when I remember, like yesterday, the wheels were turning. I could hear the squeaking of the wheels as they were pulling me to go into the operating room, and then I asked them to stop. So they brought me the paperwork that you actually sign your life away before you go into surgery, and I decided to sign myself out and not go through it, and discover and understand this journey of why, that age-old question of why is it this happening. And of course, this took me on to something called epigenetics that says it's not your DNA that predisposes you to disease, it's your environment that you surround yourself physically, emotionally, and psychologically. So I knew something was missing from the puzzle besides the medicine, besides the invasive measures that we need to actually delve into. And sure enough, I found what that was, and that's the root causes behind a lot of these chronic conditions that we could alleviate, that starts in the mind. And like rightly so, the mindset. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Needless to say, after I went on that journey, I lost 30 kgs in 6 months. I transformed my endometriosis, which was unheard of without invasive surgery. And of course, I got rid of the precancer cells in my ovaries. And here I am. I feel and better than I've ever felt in my life. I don't mind saying I'm 55 years old, and I don't have a blood pressure issue, cholesterol issue. I'm not on hormone replacement therapy, nothing. That once in a while, maybe I'll take an ibuprofen for a headache, but that's about it. And that's what I've learned through this journey. At the time, of course, you don't feel like there's any learning and it's only suffering, but looking back, I would not change anything, because you take away that intangible experience that you don't find in any textbooks, in any university, and that you can pay it forward to others.
So the voice that made you stop just at the doors of the operating room, operating theatre, was that voice, would you call it your gut, intuition, your inner voice? What would you call it?
I think it's a combination. I think it's that voice that comes from the gut, and that you feel that's not right. This isn't the way. But I had the courage to say, no, I'm stepping away from this. Many people are like, oh, I'm already getting wheeled in, the doctor knows best, or whatever, and then I have to do it, right? No, I actually had the courage. You have to have the courage to step up and listen to that voice, and ask the right questions. Do your research, do your diligence, and make sure that voice is actually aligned with actually research, with having second opinions, third opinions, whatever it may be, that aligns, and then you will see that what you chose and that voice that you actually went with was the right one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh. Tell me more about your journey. It's so fascinating. I just want to keep hearing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, everything is in the book. And then I decided to actually, because a lot of people saw me before and after. Like I was this, I had never had acne in my life. And here I am at 40-something years old with acne, a lot of weight. Even though, I was skinny in my teenage years, I was a totally different person. And then later on, when I did the transition, within 6 months, people are like, what are you doing? What is it? What is your secret? What is happening? Because that transformation was just like a big difference, right? So I started mentioning the methodology and the discoveries, and they're like, oh my God, more people need to know about this. What is it? Is this a process? And needless to say, I discovered a methodology that anyone can go through, from, having a chronic condition to even preventative measures, that maybe they have a family member who has a certain condition they want to prevent. And if you go through this process, it's a 6-step process over 6 weeks, and then be able to transform your health, and starting with your mindset, it has such a huge ripple effect. Not only, because I describe your life as, your wheel of life as like a pizza pie. Right? Imagine you have all these slices in the pie, and if you have fungus or something wrong on one of the one of the slices, it's going to affect the whole pie. So what I mean by that, if you have something wrong in your health, it's going to affect your finances, it's going to affect your relationship, it's going to affect everything else. But just the opposite, if you fix that one piece or slice of the pie, it's going to have a ripple effect in everything else, like your finances, your relationships, and your business or your career, right? And it all starts with the mindset. It all starts with the root cause and understanding where it all happened and why, and creating that ripple effect, if you will, throughout the process.
Wow.
Thank you.
I love that. So, no, I mean, it's true. I mean, the past few years, I've also had some personal battles with mental health and everything, and I've been recommended this medication, that treatment, this, that, and the other, and all it was a bit of exercise.
Yeah.
And a few changes in my life, sleeping on time, not eating a lot of crap, just like sitting to a routine, having a bit of a schedule, all things very simple, small changes that basically helped me overcome my, I always say I was misdiagnosed with depression, because I was going through a really, really low period in my life, and I walked into the doctors going, make this stop. Yeah. Like, it was at a point where I was just like, you need to make this stop. There has to be some way you can make this stop. What is happening to me? Not understanding what it was, and was just told, you have depression. And for someone who's like a happy person, all of these things, it's like, you've made a mistake, can you check? And at the same time, I'm like crying my eyes out, but I'm like, no, it can't be possible. A couple of weeks later, so they're like, oh, you need to take this medication. Me being me goes, okay, whatever. Will it make it stop? Yeah. Not doing any research.
Right. See?
Not doing any research. Started taking these antidepressants and took them for a week. Went back to the doctor, and she said, oh no, actually, took them, and she said, come back and see me in a month. Went back in a month. I said, I've taken them for a month now. What do I do? And she was like, you have to keep taking them. I said, what do you mean? But I'm fixed now. Like, what do you mean I have to keep taking these medications? Right. And she was like, no, minimum for a year you need to be on this. And I swear to God, that's when I realized, what have I got myself into? Right. Because I didn't do my research, and I just trusted the doctors to tell me, but they didn't tell me what
the side effects
or what the long-term effects were, everything. And I was like, what is happening? And I realized while I was on that medication that wasn't really working. Like, I didn't feel any different, or I still felt like I was up and down. And I went back to the doctors, my psychiatrist, and I was like, listen, it's not working, and these are my symptoms. And he was like, oh, I think you have ADHD. And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, depression can be a byproduct of ADHD, and you have moods. I was like, what are you telling me? It's like, oh, do you know what? Actually, don't take that medication. Actually, probably is making your mood swings worse. Why don't you reduce? I'm like, what are you telling me right now? Yeah. And told me to take something else for ADHD, and I was just at a point where I was like, do you know what? Just wait a couple of minutes. Let me go do my research.
Exactly.
And the minute I started reading up on ADHD, I kid you not, my entire life made sense. Yeah. I was like, okay, so this is what... And to a point where now I'm looking at it as my superpower.
It is your superpower, yes.
I'm like, it's my superpower. I love
creativity.
Doing lots of things.
Yes.
Exactly.
ADHD, you're creative. You a problem solver. You think on your feet. You multitask really, really well. You get things done. You're a go-getter. I mean, there's so much that, you know, with the diagnosis, people think that, oh, ADHD means, oh, okay, it's debilitating. I'm not going to but if you leverage it,
Yes.
if you understand it, if you channel it, and it becomes your superpower. Yeah, because when you take the medications, yes, it makes you more grounded, quote unquote, not necessarily, but actually it makes you sleepy. It takes away your authentic self, which is your superpower. That was like the exact word,
Yeah.
your superpower. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as soon as I started reading up on it, I was like, okay, so I'm not really good at prioritizing. So what can I do to help? And then you
Right.
start following pages on Instagram. You start, you know, doing your research. And there's so much support now
Absolutely.
around ADHD that I think I've achieved more and more progressive and a steeper incline than I probably would have had I not known I had ADHD.
Right.
So I've really found a way to like leverage it and understand
Channel
it.
it.
And
Yes.
and channel it. And it's my spark.
Exactly.
Gets me. It's why I'm doing so many different things. I have a
Exactly.
day job. I do this. I do WCGA. Now I'm doing a podcast.
Exactly.
And none of it seems like work to me. It's just enjoyable. And if I'm not doing it, then so that's one thing I struggle with. I'm so busy on my doing all the time that when I'm not doing, again, my worth being associated to my doing, and similarly, like my worth being associated to my achieving.
Right.
What I do tell myself, like, it's okay, you'll be fine tomorrow, it's just a phase, you're just having a low day. But like, how do I deal with that?
So there's actually, besides calling it ADHD, you have something called a green brain. So there's 4 types of brain. There's green, red, purple, and I don't remember the last one. Okay. Yeah. So the green one is, so what happens with the green brain is they're very action oriented. I'll explain it this way. So you see the fuzzy picture. You meaning your goal, right? You see it right there, but it's fuzzy. So what do you need to do? You have to move towards that fuzzy picture, and the closer you get to that picture, the more understanding of what needs to be done, the steps, the corrections, and so forth. So that's the best way I could explain. So they're very action oriented. You actually have to be moving towards your goal to actually come closer to that fuzzy picture for it to become clear and have a clear understanding. So it's always about moving. It's about taking action. It's about, moving forward. The difference then with a purple brain is that where they're sitting without moving, without doing anything, they're able to create options. They're able to create a plan, a strategy to move towards. So they make less mistakes than a green brain, but they don't make decisions as easily or as fast as a green brain. We're risk takers. So when I'm saying I'm also a green brain, right? So we're very risk takers. So what being a calculated risk taker is these people make really good entrepreneurs as well. Because they take the risk, they do their diligence, but they don't actually wait a long time to take action, unlike a purple brain. Now, red brain is linear thinking. They do things in steps. So think of an engineer, an accountant. They do one step at a time. So I was listening. It's funny. I was listening to a friend of mine. She was telling me a story. And she was telling me the story of this happened, and this happened, and this happened. And then I had a call from my daughter. So I said, okay, sorry, can I call you back? Let me see what happened with my daughter. So sure enough, I finished the call with my daughter. I called her back, and my red brain friend, I was asking her to continue. She couldn't continue where she left off. She had to go back to the beginning of the story, because that's how they do things. They're not satisfied at telling the story without actually going through the flow or the steps or the process of the story for it to bring it to my, to feel satisfied that they actually told me, or she told me the story. So that's about linear brains. The last one I remembered is called blue. So blue brain, they're very intuitive. you'll hear blue brain people talk about, I feel, or my gut feeling, or I have a feeling about this. It's all about their feeling and their intuition. And actually, blue brains, they're very good intuitive, but they second guess their intuition. That's the problem. So if I needed any advice, I would actually go to a blue brain person, and their intuition is usually 90% correct.
Wow.
But unfortunately, they second guess themselves, and they never go with their intuition. They try to kick in the other part of the brain, whether it be green or red or purple, to get like something more tangible, because they feel intuition is not tangible enough. And just on a separate note, on blue brains, they actually make up only 5% of the population of the world. So they're very unique resources that we can go to for advice. But they don't understand their superpower, and they always second guess their intuition.
Wow. And how do we identify what color our brain is in this context?
So just explaining or listening to you actually talk about taking a lot of action, people who take a lot of action, they're always distracted really easily. They're working on something, they're like, ooh, this looks really nice.
Right.
I could do that. Once they start there, so they sometimes have don't complete their tasks, unfortunately, and they're always on the next thing, or they are always on multiple projects at the same time, and they're very good at multitasking. They're the person who's going to be washing the dishes, taking care of the kids, doing the laundry, all at the same time, because that's how their brain can take it. Linear red brains, they're like, no, let me finish the laundry, then I go and do the dishes, then I take care of the baby or this or that. And of course, blue brains are always like in their how they feel today, or they got on the wrong side of the bed or whatever. And then purple brains, they're very they're very low on trust of other color brains, and they think they do a lot of research and they go into the nitty-gritty and the details. They feel like they have the most of the information. Nobody does the diligence or the research as well as they do, so they actually are very hard to take information or feedback from other people, because they think they've got it down to the nitty-gritty, that no one else can actually up their information any more than they have,
Wow.
So it's quite interesting. But at the end of it, like, to answer your question, there is a survey that we give and that tells us which color brain you are. And that's what's interesting, because once you know the color brain that you are, if you get an ADHD diagnosis or not, you understand it as your superpower. This is why it brings awareness and understanding of why you're doing the way things that you're doing. And you stop wanting to be in red brain, or you stop trying to be blue or any other color, because actually your color brain is part of your DNA. It's like the color of your eyes. You cannot change the color of your eyes or color of your skin or whatever. Your color brain is the same way. So might as well understand it, leverage it, create it, make it your superpower, and channel it in the right way to achieve what you're trying to achieve.
That's amazing. What I find with ADHD is like the easy stuff that's difficult.
Yes.
The hard stuff is so much fun.
Exactly.
So easy. I was telling it to my friend. She was like, why haven't you done this, Anum? I was like, it's just because it's just easy and it's boring. Just getting like the water in the car, chain, whatever it is that you do with your car. I don't do anything to my cars. That's why I don't know. But I'm just, I'm always in a position where I'm just like, that's
because
so
we're
boring.
excellent problem solvers.
Yeah.
We like challenges.
Yeah.
And the bigger the challenge, the bigger the solving, the more the achievement you feel. Yeah.
I think maybe that's why a lot of my friends come to me with a lot of their like, problems.
Yeah, we're very good listeners too.
Yeah.
And we're creative, and we pick up on things right away. Yeah. If
Like a
you
little
are
checklist.
engaged in something and you like it, or even if you're talking to a friend and having a conversation that's interesting to you, you're going to be engaged, you're going to be answering. But imagine like you're talking to someone and your mind just, goes off and then they ask you the question. So what do you think? Right? And you're like, okay, like you get your deer in headlights. What do I think about what exactly? Oh, that used to drive my dad mad. He would be like literally sitting with me, taking my advice for like a half hour, and I'd be staring at him, and he'd be like, so what do you think, Hanan? And I'm like, huh? Oh my God, he's like, he goes crazy. It's like, oh, I shouldn't have even bothered to talk to you or whatever. And even my kids, when they come and talk to me and they see the glare in my eyes, they're like, Mom, you're not listening, are you? I'm like, no. Because if it's not interesting, you have to keep engaged, right? So what I realized is that if I start asking questions, if I ask, to keep yourself engaged, then you're actually keeping yourself grounded in the conversation,
Funny story. So I actually do that, and because I do that because I'm like, if I don't
ask questions,
it's also a way to mask your ADHD, by the way, because you're gonna lose interest. So because you don't want to lose interest because of your ADHD, like wherever I'm attending a talk or a speaker, I make sure I'm in the front row and I'm making eye contact with them and I'm nodding to everything they're saying.
Yes.
So what normally happens is the speaker just gravitates towards me and just starts engaging with me. And it's happened in work situations where one of my colleagues was like, you were really listening, weren't you? And I was like, yeah, no, I was, because if I don't do that and if I don't feel engaged, I will stop listening.
Yeah.
And even recently at an exhibition in Europe, I was there for work, and they were doing a demonstration of all the machines that we had on the stand. Right. And I was stood right at the front, and whoever was speaking, I was making sure I was asking questions, I was playing, because if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have heard anything of what anyone said.
Right.
So I'm like, I need to do this because this is important. This is my work. So how do I
engage?
Keep
engaged.
And people was like, wow, you're really excited, aren't you? Like, look, when I got told I had ADHD, I was like, this was my life. And, you know, I was grateful for my diagnosis at the time that it came. Had it came earlier, maybe I wouldn't have made the choices that I have now, and I wouldn't be sitting here. And I'm a firm believer of like having no regrets, and everything works out exactly the way it is.
And one thing I want to mention about green brains, that they always love feedback. They need feedback. They am I doing this right? Am I going in the right direction? Am I, am I seeing it right? Am I, doing the right strategy, if you will?
Yeah.
And they always need a lot of feedback. So, which is good, because then if that keeps you grounded. And I always sometimes see couples who are, one is purple and one is green. So I explain. So purple is a bit overpowering to take over the decisions, let's say, of in the relationship, because they feel they know best, they do their research, and of course they have trust in their decisions rather than take on green brain's advice. But what's really good about that relationship is that purple grounds green brains, and they actually are very good in decision making, and of course, related to business or related to entrepreneurship, and keeps them grounded and say, oh, no, don't go there, finish the project, no, don't do this or whatever. But sometimes then, if the male is purple, green, and the woman is purple, it's a bit like of a, especially in our culture, it's a
bit of an imbalance, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Regarding feedback, no, I'm totally with you. And I saw that as wanting to just like, I'm just going to say it how it is, just needing, what's it called? Like constantly be told how great I am.
Oh, no,
But it's not that. It's not that. It's genuinely like I actually want to know.
You generally want to know if the feedback. If what you're doing, if that fuzzy picture, is that where you want to go? Is that the right direction you're going? You just need feedback. You need confirmation that what you're doing in the right direction. You just keep doing more of that.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Which is absolutely. It's your brain. It's just the way it operates, the process it goes through in order to gain clarity and move forward. And for you to gain clarity, you need feedback. That's just the way it is. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So just with regards to your journey, navigating your career, what advice would you give? Because WCGA is a community of women who all of them are phenomenal in everything that they do, and can do whatever they put their mind to.
True, yeah.
But are holding themselves back and this whole fear and anxiety around applying for jobs, because sitting there, what practical advice or tips can you give them that they can, just do it, just get started? But even that to move them from here to being able to do it, there's like it feels like such a long road, and there's just so many like thorns and
So
mountains.
the best thing was empty your cup.
Okay.
You can't operate from a full cup of worry, fear, whatever. Pen and paper. Just sit down and empty your cup of what is your fears, what is stopping you, and when you ask the right question, believe me, you get the right answer. And why am I feeling this way? Or if you step back and like, why is this thing happening, or why? But it's in your head. Put it down on paper and empty that from your mind onto paper, relieves a lot of that pressure, and you gain a lot of clarity. So make sure that when you just take, it's called neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity is actually when you take pen to paper instead of typing, you actually, when you write, it's taking the information from the brain onto the paper. And the same thing, when you're studying, it takes information from the paper into your brain, right? So neuroplasticity is amazing. It actually improves your flexibility and your mind and your openness and your awareness, okay? So make sure, just as simple as just taking pen to paper, empty your cup, really, bring whatever is in your brain that's blocking you onto paper, and then move forward. And you'll see that there's more clarity, there's more focus, and be able to then achieve your goals. Yeah.
I love journaling.
Yes.
I really enjoy it. I when I feel full and when I feel, it's because I haven't journaled in a few days.
Yes.
And just talking to myself, writing to myself,
Yes.
has really, really helped with my mental health.
Yes.
My journey, for sure.
Absolutely.
And
it's not just the negative stuff.
No.
It's the positive stuff. The things you celebrate as well. What happened that was good that you liked today. What how did that conversation you were looking forward to and you were really nervous about, but it went really well. All that. It's not just the negative stuff that you want to write on paper. To make sure you celebrate as well all the positive stuff. It's called the gratitude, right? The gratitude journal. Be grateful for what you have so you could have more of the same. Yeah.
I go through my journal sometimes and I find notes like, oh my God, I'm sitting here with so many important people. Look at where you are, Anna. Oh my God. And even that, like, I write that down and I look back and I'm like, oh my God, that was so exciting. Like, look, you've made it. Like, I tell myself things like, oh my God, just take a moment to look around you. What are you doing? And it could be in a work thing, personal life, anything,
Celebrate.
The car that I'm driving or the house that I'm living in, so it takes everything that I am.
And that also, when you celebrate and you put the positive and grateful about those things, it's actually silences or that imposter syndrome we talked about in the beginning of the conversation. It makes it not as loud as it would be when you don't actually celebrate or see the positive in things. You only see the negative, and that louder, that voice becomes a little bit softer, if you will.
So one more question that I want to ask you, actually a couple, is around the fact that when we're in the job seeking process, why is it such a dread? Why is this particular job seeking process so daunting, so dreading, that people will sit there and want something, but also sit there and be like, why should I apply? I should just be, I'm capable, and why am I not getting a job? And I hate applying for jobs. Why can't I just meet someone that will just give me the position, and I just want an interview and I know I'll get it, but it's just, I don't want to sit there and apply and write and re-edit my CV. And why does it fill us with so much dread?
Because of the fear of rejection, right? Because we feel, we have that negative mindset that why would we even bother? That negative chatter. Why do I even bother? I'm not going to get the job. There's so much competition out there, especially in Dubai. I mean, it's very, very competitive. But if you actually, a lot of the research shows that it's not just what you know, but who you know. I think a lot of the strategies that we are using are from the past of like just writing a CV, sending it out, but actually have to build relationships. I've heard so many people, especially in UAE, where they've reached and been able to land a job just from one recommendation or, through the grapevine of this opening happening or whatever it may be. I think network is very important, and it's no mistake that people say network is your net worth, right?
Yeah.
Because the more people you know, the more opportunities will be there, and the more advantages or upper hand, if you will, that you will be able to land a job. You never know. You might run into the CEO, and you skip the HR, right? If you actually put yourself out there, but unfortunately, people have the fear of rejection already in front of them, that they don't actually put themselves out there and take action, or they call themselves excuses, I'm an introvert, or I don't, it's just exchanging cards, it's not going to bring any results. They always bring on that negative that stops them in their track, when in actuality, look at the research and look at the opportunities and look at the feedback from a lot of people saying, oh, I landed the job. How did you get that job? Oh, so-and-so got it for me, or so-and-so recommended, or, they even opened some doors for me. So you actually need to be more creative and explore other ways of being able to get onto, opportunities that might not be available through the mundane way of getting a job.
That's kind of why I created WCGA, because I was like, I don't want to apply for jobs. I want jobs to come to me. Exactly. How will that happen? Let me just connect with, let me just build a network that will just connect people in every single company in Dubai and in different departments. Exactly. And even now, when someone joins the WCGA WhatsApp group, I always say to them, please don't message or saying, I am this years of experience and I'm looking for a job in hospitality, admin, and HR. It's like, what is that?
Exactly.
You are telling you. Fair enough. I understand where they're coming from. They are coming from a place of, we do not want to give up on any opportunity. Right. And I'm desperate right now, so I will do a job from here to there to there. And I have so much experience, so I can transfer my skills. But what they're doing in that process is they're actually hurting themselves, because if I read that message, I'm not going to absorb it. But if I read a message where someone says, I'm looking for a restaurant manager position in this industry, like fine dining, or, a fast food chain or something like that. If I come across something like that, instantly I will remember that person and I will recommend them. Right. Instead of someone who said to me, I can do admin, hospitality and HR, I won't remember the hospitality part, because maybe this job would be right for them, but they weren't specific in their search. Right. And I really, really feel like that's the advice that I normally give everyone. It's like, don't apply for jobs just like that. Find out who you know in the company. Who can you speak to? What informational interviews can you get out of them? Ask your network. Ask people. Don't be shy. Exactly. Just ask what you need. Just ask if you have a connection. And if people can connect. People do something for nothing. Right. They do something for nothing. People are out there to help other people. So I do think that it's really important about who you know, and also to get yourself out of your comfort zone. Exactly. To be able to network, to be able to speak to people, and put yourself forward. We also get self-promotion is something as well, right? We shy away from that.
Right. I think that's a big thing for women, because a lot of male dominated world that where if a man talks about his achievements, that wow, he's a big achiever, but if women talk about their big achievements or putting themselves out there, it's like, oh, she's conceited, or we don't get that positive names, if you will, that men get. I think that's why we shy away from that, because we don't want to be called that that word or be, like we're egoistic or conceited. I was actually joined one of the, I was a speaker at one of these events, and one of the things they said is that a little bit of narcissism, believe it or not, is good. Because a lot of the big achievers or big, names or CEOs or leaders actually are considered in their ways, but the positive attitudes, right, as narcissistic, really, because they don't stop. They feel they're the best thing that God ever created, that's walking on earth, right? They feel they're amazing, their skill sets, they walk around, with a lot of confidence and so on and so forth. And so a little bit of a positive narcissism is actually healthy, and we should actually take on some of those traits as women as well.
Yeah. No, I think all the advice that you've given us has been like really, really, like, it's all about your mindset. It's
Absolutely.
all about your mindset. It all starts with your brain, your health.
It starts with
all
you,
the
yeah.
advice that you've given us today, it all starts with your mind. So the only thing that's between you and that job and you and that position or that promotion or that anything is literally you and your mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you mentioned the 3 Bs regarding like fight. So when we're in fight, flight, or freeze mode, and sometimes that happens, you see something, you see a position, you want to apply for it, but you're either like running the other way because you're like, no, I'm not going to get it. If I don't get this, it's going to break my heart because I'm so perfect for this job. And at the other time, you just freeze, but you don't take any action. And
right.
So how do we, is that what you can call the responses we have when we're in the process, in the job seeking process?
Right. So one of the important things, and I've mentioned it to a lot of women who are going in for interviews, and they're like, oh my God, Dr. Hanan, that just worked so well. It calmed me down. It made me focus. It made me on key to answer the questions properly and be able to land that job. Right. So one of the things actually I speak about in my book, Second Chances, is called the 3 Bs. And the first B is all about training your brain. Just like you go to the gym to train your body to be physically equipped, you have to always be training your brain to be physically focused and be able to stay grounded, rather go onto this fight, flight, or freeze response. And that's the first one is called brain training, and it's just counting 100 to 1 backwards. 100, 99, 98, 97, 96, 90. I do it all the time. And that you do first thing in the morning and the last thing you do before you sleep. What happens is it releases happy, healing chemicals in your brain rather than releasing cortisol, which is stress-related chemicals. And the more you release cortisol, the more stressed you'll be and the more you'll get stuck into that fight, flight, or freeze response. So first thing in the morning, I see women or people coming back to me, they're like, oh my God, it's released all these endorphins and chemicals. I don't even reach for my morning coffee anymore because they're actually jumping out of bed. The second B is breathing. I mean, we all hear about breathing and being calm to calm our mind, but there's actually something called 6-6-9 breathing. And it's just a matter of taking 6 breaths in, holding those 6 breaths for 6, and releasing on the count of 9. That also releases the happy, healing chemicals. And of course, one thing about your mind is you cannot be happy and sad at the same time. You can't be excited and calm at the same time. You can't be anxious and, calm at the same time, right? So might as well, once your brain is on the one path, it's very hard for it to go on the other path. Meaning, if your brain is already releasing happy, healing chemicals, it's very hard to release the cortisol and chemicals and be able to have that fight, fleet, or freeze response, right? And the last B is body. So if you talked about the rabbit hole, right?
Yep.
Before you actually get into the rabbit hole, you remove yourself from getting into the rabbit hole. What do I mean by that? What I mean is if you're sitting down, stand up. If you're inside, go outside. If you're on your laptop, remove yourself from that space. Because what ends up happening is when you're sitting there, you're actually seeping that negative thought pattern into the seat. And of course, it drags you further down and gets you into that rabbit hole. So the last one is body. The last B is body, meaning remove yourself from that environment. Because what happens on the outside and shifts on the outside, it actually shifts on the inside as well.
Wow. That is amazing.
And one of the things that's why I suggest is doing all three before going into the interview, meaning counting the 100 to 1 backwards, doing the 669 breathing, and then, of course, using your body or your mindset to imagine that image of success, of shaking the hand and getting and receiving that job offer. Yeah.
I'm going to use that. That's
It works amazing. And people are like, that's so simple. I'm like, yes. Sometimes simple things in life is what gets you through. And because you look at problems as a mountain, right? When you have a mountain, you don't see that small door that's in front of you, right? You're looking at the mountain. And sometimes the simple things and the simple steps you take is actually the solution to conquer through that mountain. You could go around the mountain. You could go through the mountain. You don't have to go over the mountain. Yeah. So it's all about the mindset, like we said, and being able to tackle situations and problems and make them into bite sizes that we're able to move forward and not let it getting us stuck in the situation.
That is beautiful. Just one final point I wanted to speak to you about, because it kind of overlaps, doesn't it, a little bit. It's fear of rejection. Mm-hmm. So we're already, when we're applying for a job or when we're doing something, we already think that we're not going to get it, right? We're already so concerned that we're not going to get it. Mm-hmm. Are we feeding that fear of rejection? Do we feed it?
So it's that fear. Any fear is really an image of what's the worst thing that could happen, right? You like I had one lady who couldn't drive because every time she saw herself driving, she was going to get into a detrimental accident and she was going to die. That's the image she had in her mind. So, of course, there's going to be a huge fear from driving, right? So you don't want to, of course, you're not going to come within 5 feet of driving a vehicle, right, with that kind of image. So you have to change the image. So that fear of rejection is already that picture that you created that they're going to say, okay, thanks, but no thanks, right? Or like, oh, no, your CV sucks, or I don't know, whatever the image, or you're not going to get that job or whatever, right? So you have to change that image. That's the thing. And if you can change that image, you can achieve. So like I spoke about Napoleon Hill. He always said, if you can see it, you can achieve it. If you can think it, it becomes a reality. Thoughts become reality, right? So it all starts with you. It all starts with your mindset. If you have a bad image, change the image. There's some, next time when we get to talk about the book, I'll let you know that there's exercises that you actually can do before going in for the interview that really optimizes your brain and changes that image of success. Because whether you think you can or think you can't, either way you're right. It's all up to you. So might as well think you can.
I love that. That's amazing. We started off talking about imposter syndrome, and I didn't actually think, even though I talk about imposter syndrome all the time, I didn't actually make that connection when it came to like sitting there and applying for a job. I always thought of it in terms of like being a fraud or not believing what you're doing, but it's a blanket term that covers all of this that we've discussed today. And I'm really glad that the listeners and those people watching have gotten to hear it from you who've actually been through such an amazing, interesting life, and your journey's just been so remarkable.
Thank you so much.
And we're so grateful that you've shared this with us today. Thank you so much, Dr. Hanan, for all the advice and all the tips that you've given us, and for sharing your beautiful story.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure having you as my first guest on this podcast.
I'm so excited.
Great. And hopefully I will have you back very soon once I've read this book and we can actually talk through that. But thank you so much to everyone for watching and listening to Playing the Next Level, WCGA's official podcast. This is our first official episode, and I would really appreciate it if you would give us your feedback, any comments, any suggestions that you may have in the comment section. Please obviously share this if it resonates with you, and let us know what out of what we've discussed today resonated with you the most. And let us know if you've tried any of those tips that Dr. Hanan has shared today, because I definitely will be trying the 3 Bs. So we'd love to hear more from all of you, and thank you so much to everyone and everyone in the community that has supported me to take this first step and just do it. Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning into Playing the Next Level. I hope this episode helped you feel inspired and ready to level up. If you enjoyed it, please like, share and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'd love to hear your thoughts and join the conversation on Instagram at WCGA UAE and let us know your key takeaway. Remember, you're never alone in your journey. We're here cheering you on one step at a time. Until next time, keep playing to your next level.